Welcome to another episode of Just Cooking this Ramadan. So happy to be hosting this episode specifically because it has an amazing dish that I can't wait to share with you. My name is Bassam Al-Alawi, aka Be The Maker, and I'm your host today. So I love this dish because it incorporates a lot of Japanese elements, and the dish is actually Japanese in nature, but the rice not so much. So what is it, you're wondering? It's called Nasudengaku. Nasudengaku is actually an eggplant dish covered in miso, glazed in the oven, really nice, sweet, savory, a lot of umami. But I've chosen to serve it today covered with some black sesame, and I think we're ready to go. As I explain this dish, I'll be pointing out certain ingredients that we'll need to use today, so keep up and stay on it. So I have a tiny little wok here, and just get that little sesame seed out of there. And what I'm gonna do is just use a neutral oil that I've chosen for today, and I wanna keep it light. I don't want it to flavor this too much. This is gonna be the oil that I'm gonna be using for the sauteed garlic jasmine rice. Now, jasmine rice is not traditionally used in Japanese cuisine, although it can be, why not? This dish, or Japanese hibachi type rices, usually made at teppanyaki joints and stuff like that, uses a short grain, very glutinous Japanese rice, which is really delicious. I've chosen jasmine rice today because I like the slightly bigger grain, but it is as sticky and it does have that similar texture. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna peel this garlic and I'm gonna give it a rough chop, right? You wanna get those skins out of the way. And you wanna keep this as rough as possible. These are gonna caramelize, they're gonna turn nice and brown, they're gonna be delicious. At least I'm hoping you'll think it's delicious, because I really do. And this dish is usually served at Japanese restaurants, mostly as a starter, but I think it's hearty enough to be a main course. See, eggplants are known as poor man's caviar because once cooked, they have that like caramelly, like texture that you get when you have caviar, which I love. So I'm gonna leave this aside and I'm gonna give this a rough chop. Chop off these ends because they're hard, fibrous, and you don't want them in your food. Give this a very quick rough chop. You're gonna give this a very nice rough chop. It's gonna brown up, but you don't wanna burn it because bitter, burned garlic is not what you want in this dish, all right? And add as much garlic as you think or deem acceptable. I like a lot of garlic, especially in fried rice dishes, and I think it's delicious. And what we're gonna do, just move this aside right here, get rid of all of that, make sure cleaning stations are nice and clean. Now this rice dish has nothing but the following ingredients. Some pre-cooked jasmine rice that I've made in a rice cooker, this garlic, I'm not gonna add any soy sauce, a tiny bit of salt, and some rice wine vinegar. So basically, the ingredients for this rice dish, which I find utterly delicious, are very simple. It's jasmine rice, it's a bit of garlic, it's some soy sauce. I'm gonna finish it with just a touch of toasted sesame oil. So let's begin. I'm gonna take this garlic, and it's gonna sizzle quite quickly because this oil has been preheated, as you can see. I mean, oh my God. Let me grab a little wooden spoon so we can mix this up. Let me grab this wooden spoon and give that a mix. As you can see, the garlic is browning very quickly. So you don't want to let it burn. The rice is ready, pre-cooked in a rice cooker. I'm just going to move this aside like so. It's nice and golden, as you can see, crispy. There you go. I'm going to take my rice off the heat and I'm going to add it in there, and it's going to sizzle and it's going to be beautiful. I'm serving the rice as a side dish to the Nasudengaku, which is the eggplant glazed in miso. I'm going to just give this, and what I like about jasmine rice. So I'm gonna mix up this garlic and jasmine rice that I have pre-prepared. The jasmine rice is cooked in a rice cooker. It is the easiest way to make most of these, what I call Asian rices, especially the glutinous ones, right? Because if you don't make this using a rice cooker, you have to soak your rice. You want that liquid to penetrate the rice grain so that when it cooks beautifully and evenly. Now this is done, and I want to keep it white because the eggplants are nice and dark, they have that glaze on them, but I will kind of top this off with some black sesame, which I think is really nuttier than white sesame, and more delicious. So I mean, you guys, the smell is coming off of this. What I'm gonna do is add some of my rice wine vinegar. Now I add this for some acidity to cut through some of that oil that I've added, and it's really delicious. Not too much, that's it. That's about a tablespoon and a half or even a teaspoon if you don't like that vinegary taste. And it will start to sizzle. The natural sugars present in the rice wine vinegar are gonna caramelize and give it a residual sweetness that is very, very nice. I think that is done. What I'm gonna do is top it off, and you probably can't see this because it says toasted sesame seed oil is slightly dark, and I've just put a touch of this into this bowl. There we go. Lovely. Okay. Yeah, let's put the rest of that. Why not? There it is. That nuttiness is so beautiful. I really love it. Once this is done, you guys, I am going to set it aside and start making that nice glaze that I'm going to be using to coat the eggplants. But before then, let's just put this aside, closed up the heat because we don't need that anymore. The rice is nice. You guys, it's so fragrant. What I'm going to finish it with is just a tiny bit of fine sea salt. There we go. Look at that. There's a lot of flavor in those eggplants, so you don't want a very strong flavored rice and a very strong flavored eggplant. They need to mesh well together to create this cohesive, beautiful taste in your mouth. Now that I've mixed that up and incorporated all the salt, that's it. I just set it aside. And let us begin on those eggplants. So I've chosen for today these really nice long eggplants because I just like the way they look. They're used a lot in Asian cuisine, and when they bake, they just look really nice. So what I'm gonna do is just chop off these ends, right, like so. And I'm gonna use all of these because this dish flies off the table. Everybody loves it. And I like that it's Japanese inspired. I find Japanese food to be very light when you eat it. So it's a really nice meal to have in Ramadan when you want to keep it light. At least that's the theory. Even though a lot of people tend to overeat, we don't want to do this Ramadan. Let's keep it light but delicious. I've set these aside. We can get rid of these. There we go. And what I'm going to do now is just slice them in half, like so, right? You can see the flesh is perfect. They are not super ripe, overly soft. They are just the right consistency. You don't want these to be overly done because when they cook, they turn into mush and you don't want that. What we're going to do now, just run the knife straight through those eggplants. There we go. And I'm not going to use these like bake them whole. I'm going to chop them up in half so you get more bang for your buck. But before I do that, I will salt them a little bit. What salting does, it takes out that excess liquid and it removes that bitterness that you get with eggplants sometimes. So these are quite large, so I'll chop them in half. There you go. That is way more manageable, you guys. Look at that. Perfect. Set these aside. Try and keep them all the same size so that they cook evenly. These are kind of long, so I'll cut them in half. I have a relatively even size now, and I think it'll cook really well in the oven. When we're back, I'll show you what to do with this. But remember, add a bit of salt on the eggplants because you want to draw out all that water and reduce the residual bitterness that is usually found in eggplants. All right, when we're back, I'll show you the secret we're gonna do to make this taste utterly delicious. I grabbed a little bit of that rice and it tastes delicious. What we're gonna do is you're gonna create a crisscross grid on these eggplants because you want, look at that. You're gonna crisscross that because you want all those flavors, once it's in the oven, to kind of penetrate inwards and really infuse that eggplant. So it looks as follows. You're gonna you don't wanna penetrate through the skin, right? Because it's gonna just break apart. You just wanna create a crisscross pattern, like so. There you go. And this recipe was actually taught to me by a Japanese chef friend of mine, and because he knows I love it so much, and I'm thinking you will too. They're also like sometimes sold at restaurants and they're kind of overpriced. When you make it at home, it's just way cheaper, way more affordable. Now in terms of getting the main ingredient of this dish today, which is white miso, I know that it's kind of a specialty ingredient, but you have a lot of places on the island that sell it. I love going to Nature Valley. I think they sell some of the great or best brand for white miso, and that's where I got it. For rice wine vinegar, soy sauces, all of that stuff, my suggestion is always to go to the Asian markets because they are way more affordable and less overpriced than the more, large super mega markets or whatever they're called now. Temples of consumerism. All right. You can see, once I pushed it aside, like so, you see that it goes all the way down, but it does not penetrate the skin, right? You want to keep that intact. And I'm going to keep doing this for all these eggplants. And what this is gonna do as well is gonna give it a really nice grill marks that look oh so chefy, ladies and gentlemen. Now, eggplants are not everybody's favorite. They are mine. And the way to do this dish, I'm gonna fry it now, but what you can do is oil it and then bake it in the oven, take it out, put your glaze, which I'm gonna show you how to make, and then put it back into the oven just so that it gets this nice caramelization happening. I, on the other hand, today I'm going a little bit on the, well, not so healthy side, but only because it gives it a way creamier flavor, frying eggplants. And the oil is coming to temperature. I think we need a little bit more oil. I'm gonna drop just a tiny bit of flour just to see. Nope, it's not ready. All right, we can keep going with our eggplants. When we're back, what we're gonna do is take these eggplants, dip this side into the flour, and then slip them in the pan. And we get them nice and golden brown before they go into the oven covered with that glaze. Once this process is done, in the same pan, I'm gonna show you how to make that miso beautiful glaze. Stay tuned for the rest of this. You cannot miss this. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna take my crisscrossed eggplants and I'm gonna just liberally kind of press them into that flour. The flour helps with the browning process, and I made sure that this oil is nice and hot. If the oil is not up to temperature, what's gonna happen? They're gonna absorb a little too much oil. So what I'm gonna do is gently, ladies and gentlemen, slip them in there like so. And they start to sizzle beautifully. Just gonna move that to the side so I can make more of a mess. And I'll continue dipping all of these in there, right? And the reason you add this flour is so you get that nice golden brown, like I said, and you'd never, ladies and gentlemen, want to overcrowd the pan. What it does, it reduces the temperature of the oil, and then they start to, whatever food you're frying starts to take in a lot of that oil and becomes oil logged. And it's really unpleasant when you eat it, because it's just like an explosion of just oil in your mouth. That ain't nice. All right. Nice and ready. If you have a curve in the eggplant, what you can do is just make a slit on the opposite side so that it opens up like so, right? It's gonna be fine. There we go. I'm gonna add just one more, a small one. We don't wanna make it too big. And I'm gonna keep my eye out on these eggplants, y'all, because we don't want them to burn. So our eggplants have been perfectly browned and seared on both sides in that fragrant oil. And what I'm gonna do now is gently take them out and put them on some absorbent paper, okay? And without the miso glaze on top, it is already smelling so good. I'm excited, I'm starting to smile, which means the color is just right. Should not be overcooked, should not be like dark and weird. It should be nice and golden like so. So we're gonna move this to the side, ladies and gentlemen, just to let it, you know, keep it out of the way, because we're gonna be using this section in our wok that we've kind of wiped clean to make a really great miso honey glaze sauce, soy, magical things. It's gonna be great. What I'm gonna do before I begin that process though, I'm just gonna gently salt this, just gently. There's already seasoning in the miso sauce, and you don't want it too salty, if you remember. I'm just gonna set this aside right here. Let that excess oil, if there is any, kind of absorb using the paper. And now I will start on this incredible sauce. So, I've got my wok over here. Now, this miso glaze sauce is usually made with sake, but sake contains alcohol and we don't want to use that. So we've come up with an alternative. Now I've done some research, talked to a bunch of people what I can do, and basically they recommended grape juice, specifically white grape juice because it's really dry. But I couldn't find that, so I had to look and I found the cranberry juice. Well, it's sold as such in all the major supermarkets. I can't name names, but it actually uses white grape juice to make it basically. So what I've done here is I've taken my rice vinegar and white grape juice mixture. I've added it in here in equal parts of our white miso, which is relatively sweet. I'm gonna add just a little bit more of that because I love the flavor of it. A tiny bit of soy sauce and some honey and a tad bit of sugar because I want it to be a little more glazy. And as you can see, it's almost reduced by half and it has that syrupy texture. And this is exactly what we want. And what I'm gonna do at this point is just give it a mix. Look at that, like syrup, perfection. I'm gonna close that, Well, I'll try to at least. And then once that happens, we're gonna take all our eggplants, lay them out over here like so. So that's off. I'm gonna take the eggplants gently, clean hands, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna lay them in this dish, right? And you can tell that they're not turned into mush. They're not weird looking. I've got big sizes, small sizes, and I'm gonna layer them, hopefully get them all to fit in here. What's gonna happen next is I'm gonna take some of that glaze, which is still nice and bubbly, and I'm gonna glaze every single one of these, and then they're gonna go into the oven, and they're gonna get nice and crispy. All those sugars in the miso glaze are gonna caramelize, that nuttiness, the soy, you name it. There we go. I think we can chance one more of these, maybe right in here. Perfection. There we go. Now, I'm gonna take a spoon right over here. Excuse me while I pull some acrobatics. So I've taken one of these spoons that I always have lying around, and we're gonna take our very nice miso glaze. Just gonna give it one last taste. Just a little bit, right on here. Careful, it burns. Perfect. We're gonna take some of that, and we're gonna layer it all over those eggplants like so. You want the glaze to kind of penetrate the small crevices that we made, the crisscross hatch pattern we made with our small paring knife. It's totally legit looking. And all of that, once it caramelizes, we're gonna top off with some white sesame. When we're back, this will be out of the oven. I'm gonna stick it in there for about 12 minutes, 15 minutes at 200 degrees, 190 degrees, just until I get a nice color, because as you know, these eggplants are already cooked. What we're doing right now is we're just getting all those sugars to caramelize. When we're back, we'll just be plating this, and we're ready to go, trying it out. See you in a bit. So I've put the sauce all over those eggplants, stuck them in the oven, taken them out, 20 minutes or so at 200 degrees Celsius, just laid them out beautifully. And what I did, and I'll continue to do, is sprinkle some of those white sesame seeds on top of those like dark eggplants so that color pops. And then what I did, laid down the rice right in the middle. You can plate this however you want. You can put the rice in the bottom of a bowl and the eggplants on top. Some black sesame all over that white rice. The black on the white rice just pops, and a bit. So I'm placing some of those green onions on top of that beautiful garlic jasmine rice that I've sauteed with a bit of sesame oil. Toasted sesame oil, that is. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, a Japanese Nasudengaku, or miso glazed eggplant with jasmine fried garlic rice. It is delicious, ladies and gentlemen. I can't wait to have this delicious looking dish. I hope you guys have a blessed Ramadan. Stay grateful, stay safe, stay together, and enjoy this amazing dish. It smells.